Hey everyone, this is Casey Let Gordon at It All Media, a home for the news stories that define us and conversations women want to have. Today, I'm sitting down with Lauren
Lauren
Smith.
Smith.
Oh,
Oh,
are you
are you
getting
getting feedback?
feedback?
I was for a second. Sorry. I was trying to put on do not disturb and instead it got Siri. I'm so sorry.
It
Started
is so fine because
it
you know
is on
what? This is real life. So y'all are seeing the real tech glitches and all.
there.
Lauren Smith Brody is the founder of the Fifth Trimester movement. I know you've written a book, you talk to women, and I saw a post that you did on Masonette. You have a column there. And I had to reach out. You were so gracious to be like, yes, I love women empowerment things. Like, let's chat. But I had never heard the term. And so, for those of you that may not be familiar, the first, second, and third trimester, it's when you're baking the baby inside your body. The fourth trimester is for some people the glorious, newborn phase. For some people, it can be a hellacious newborn phase. And then you go back to the real world. And that is where the working mother is born, as you say, Lauren. So, welcome to the show. I am so excited to talk about this. For everyone that has followed along with my story, they know that is where my fuck it all moment happened. And now you've given me language to say it was my fifth trimester. So, I'm so thrilled to chat to you today.
Thank you. You described that so perfectly, Casey. And it's funny, I think the nicest compliment I got from some people after my book came out, which was a full 5 years ago now, was the ones who said, "Thank you so much for giving me a term, for
Right.
putting words to it." And just to know that we're not new motherhood can be such an isolating experience. I would imagine that new pandemic motherhood even more so.
Right.
And just to know that there's some solidarity there enough that it's common enough that it deserves a name, I think can be helpful to people. Um, I know that for me, when I was formerly a magazine editor for the first 1.0 of my career, the first 16 years that I was working after college, and the very first step I took toward my whole 2.0 career in writing the book was to trademark the term, the fifth trimester. It was on the advice of another female founder of a business. And she just gave me, she was like, you know what? You keep talking about wanting to do this. Just go trademark it, and that will be your first step. And it's funny just relaying to you now how meaningful it was to hear that other people found solidarity in the term. I'm realizing that actually by naming it myself, I set myself on that fuck it moment that you're talking about. And I was like,
Yes.
screw this old career. Here we go. You know?
I think that, I mean, thank God for the people and women around us too to say, hey, go just take step one. I found that for me, you and I were talking before we hit record, motherhood for me became the ultimate mirror to hold
Mm,
up and live my values.
mhm,
I believed in women can be anything, including a badass in the boardroom or at home raising amazing children and being a badass stay at home mom. Like, I firmly believed that. I believe that, being a mom is a choice, and should it be one you choose, like, is one of the most important jobs that our society has because you're raising, the future
mhm,
generations. Like, I believed all this. And yet I had my own grappling with this loss of independence and becoming a mother, right? Physically, your body is not just your own. It's in service of your family unit, in
mhm,
service of your child, in service of this life you're building. And for me, and I think you had this in common, I had a very high pressure job of which I got a ton of validation from being able to wear the badge of honor to say I'm in this high pressure job.
mhm.
Then the fifth trimester hits, and I've talked about it really openly. 6 months postpartum. God love my daughter. She did not sleep. So I'm sleep deprived. I'm pumping in like a closet every hour and a half. I'm with client meetings. I'm growing my team. I've been promoted, which on surface sounds like so empowering. And I was really proud of the company. In practice, actually, was a lot of pressure on a new parent without a ton of support in place, that I didn't even realize I needed. And so I began to crumble. And I was driving home, and I shared this with you. I was driving home to pick up my daughter, and I thought, I want to drive my car off the road. It was this very visceral moment. And I thought the mirror for me there was, yes, I'm in pain and I need to go get therapy, help, whatever. But it was, if my daughter, and I think mothers of daughters have, I certainly carry a different responsibility, but if my daughter was living this life and felt trapped because of her professional circumstances, I would feel really disappointed at her definition of success.
Mhm. I really relate to that. I'm in awe. I'm so sorry you went through that. I just wanna say that and acknowledge that.
Appreciate
I'm
that.
married to a psychiatrist, and, when people talk about suicidal ideation or wanting to hurt themselves, that deserves to be taken really seriously, and I'm so
Mm,
glad you took yourself seriously. And I really relate to the idea of our kids mirroring back for us just the hard decisions that we have to make, and how dedicated we have to be to taking care of ourselves in order to take care of them. Which, all those things that you were saying earlier about feeling like you could be the best at everything. Very often that doesn't include taking good care of ourselves. And, it is all ultimately in service of our kids. Um, and I think that's a really hard thing to wrap your head around, and especially if your former career, especially if you moved up quickly, and it sounds like
yes.
we have that in common and had a lot of success, it's probably also a foundational part of your identity. And then suddenly you throw in motherhood, and there was a therapist I interviewed in my book, her name is Sarah Best, who said who said, "You may have climbed whatever version of a ladder your career and industry had, but when you go back to your paid work after having a baby, it is your first day on the job as a brand new working mom." And that is really, really unsettling. And yet, if you can kind of adopt that same mirror idea and let the people around you mirror back to you what you need,
Yes.
it can be a time of real growth too. And that was really what I hoped to achieve in the research I did for my book, interviewing and surveying these hundreds and hundreds of other mothers who had careers, but also in the work I do going forward, helping businesses support and retain these moms by supporting all caregiving. Ultimately, it's a time of real growth.
I'm obsessed with so many things you said. First of all, the difference between paid work and work. It is
Mhm.
all work, and I think that is such a great clarifier. I had a good friend and I talk about it. She was one of the catalysts for starting my business. We had our daughters at the same time. She
Mhm.
chose to stay home and I chose to go back to work. And we were having lunch one day and she said, "I feel really judged by our generation
Mhm.
because I could have it all and chose not to.
Mm.
I'm not living up to my potential." So I've
Mhm.
and then, cut to 6 months later, I'm not doing well mentally, and it's like, you're damned if you do.
Right.
You're damned if you don't, so why not just do what works for you? But I love this reframing because so many of us, like, we make sense out of structure and research. Like you said, like, you love to dig in, and the ability to say, like, I might be a professional and an expert here or growing in my career, but I'm also doing this brand new thing. Brene Brown calls it FFT, fucking first times, which I just love because it's like again, naming something, maybe that's just, like the therapy lover in me. It helps make it less scary, but
Mhm.
to be able to say, like, wow, for the first time I'm a working parent, for the first time I'm having to call out sick cuz my kid is sick and, be with them. Like, these are all things we're experiencing. And I also loved that it's a double-sided marketplace of sorts, like, right, like, you have the individual and the work we have to do there. We have to take accountability to say what we need and be in touch
Mhm.
with ourselves, but we can't ignore this massive gravitational pull of the systems at play.
Mhm.
And so I find that even the most equipped, empowered, in touch, self-aware, emotionally intelligent women and parents and caregivers can only go so far if they butt up against a system that doesn't support that. And so I know you have your book, the work you do, but you call it a movement.
Mhm.
I want to talk about, like, the systemic societal movement. Like, in Lauren's dream world, wave the wand. What is your utopia for working parents, for businesses? Because I don't think what you're saying is motherhood is more important than any of these, but the systems have to support a large percentage
Right.
of us that also choose to have this as a part of our lives.
Right. I think, gosh, so many good points and questions in there. I think, pulling back like the eagle eye view of all of that is just the simple acknowledgement that caregiving is work.
Mm,
Because when you said that, paid work versus unpaid work, it is all work. It does all contribute to a world that we want to live in. If you are home taking care of your children and raising them to be conscientious, interesting, interested, wonderful people who will go off into the world and do whatever paid or unpaid work they do, like that is, at its base that is absolutely contributing to our economy even if you just want to be stone cold, like, just
Yes.
economic about it. Um, I wrote down a couple of his systems and negotiating. So you were talking about, having a kid, who might be sick and you have to call out of your paid work to take care of them. Obviously, that is something that so many people with caregiving obligations, moms, dads, grandparents, everybody is dealing with right now and has for the last couple of years. What I found in my research and what I found in my work continuing since then is that, because of a lot of those sort of societal, cultural expectations and gender roles and the systems that aren't set up to assume we need help,
Mm.
that young women in particular, before they become parents, are just so used to saying yes, that yes is gets you to the next step, and, you're conditioned to say yes, and so you're not used to negotiating for anything. And I'm not even talking about the difference of, like, once you're a mom, it's easier to say no. Like, I actually think that you say better, like, more thoughtful yeses, you do sort of that internal compromising. But what I mean is that very often, the first time you've ever had to say to work, I have this other thing that's pulling on me, that, by the way, happens to be a human being,
Right.
is when you're a parent. You've just kind of climbed is what I found, a lot of us do. And then suddenly you're having, not only to negotiate for the first time, not only to, like, care more about your income than ever before, and
Right.
your work life balance, and having, time for yourself that actually counts, that isn't just like working for the man, but you're doing it with the highest stakes possible. You've had no practice at it. So it's this double whammy of, doing a hard job, but also doing doing it in this way for the first time, which, with compromises, with negotiation. And one thing I try to actually teach, I have a little bit of my business is coaching, and one thing I try to teach people is to know that, wait, I just lost my train of thought. And this is honestly, like, this is I will actually just share with you, because fuck it
Yeah.
all. So I've been having there's like a little bit of a health thing that's been going on with me for the last 5 days. I'm totally fine. It's fine, but I have not slept well.
Mm.
And so I actually have this freedom of, like, my kids are at school right now. They're
Yes.
healthy, but I haven't slept in days. And so I will just acknowledge that I just, like, lose my train of thought sometimes. What was I
Also,
saying?
thank you.
Oh,
Like,
sure.
because you're as brilliant and amazing and talented, all of that, but to say, "Yeah, my mind has been elsewhere and I'm tired. I'm here
Yeah.
and I'm gonna give
Yeah.
you what I got."
Exactly.
So, I we need more of that. When we do
Oh,
that,
it's
we
good
invite
enough.
others to show up exactly as they are. So, thanks. Love it.
Of course, you're welcome. So wait, so where, okay,
We were
what were
talking about that we don't have a lot of experience negotiating.
right,
Like, we're out in this world. Oftentimes it's said, like, say yes and figure out the how
right,
later, right?
right.
Like, there's all this cultural, like,
I
push on
don't
it.
believe in fake it till you make it. I mean, if we
Love
don't
that.
okay, so that'll get us right back to the systems thing that you were bringing up.
Yep.
So, I hate fake it till you make it. That is absolutely what I was taught growing in
Mhm.
my career before I had kids. Like, that expression, like, "Dress for the job that you
You
want, not the
want.
job you have." Like, "Don't ask too many questions." Like, you're supposed to just, like, oh my gosh, I remember we even had one, it was like a career development thing, and they brought in someone to teach us about swagger, like,
I
how to have
can't.
swagger. I mean, which
I
is like,
cannot.
had to co and it was totally well intended. I had an amazing
Totally. No,
boss,
I get it, but
creative
it's
people working in magazines, like, it's just
also
hilarious to think of it now.
5 years ago, I would have been like, "Sign me up. I want my swag."
Totally,
Like,
right? But here's
yes.
here's the problem with swagger that you're pretending to have, right?
Mhm.
And faking it till you make it, is we cannot solve problems we can't see. And the truth is, probably there are so many people around you who are facing some of the same challenges. And if we just were a little bit more open about them, we would find solidarity, camaraderie, help solve them. We would stop internalizing what we think of as faults, that something's wrong with me, that I came back, to my job at 12 weeks postpartum, which, by the way, is, more maternity leave than the vast majority of mothers have in America.
In America, yep.
And I like, and it feels really hard, so there must be something wrong with me, when in fact it's the system. All of the research points toward 6 months of paid leave as really the minimum standard to protect mental health, baby's physical health, partner's bond with the baby, your eventual earnings long term, your career
Yes.
long term. And so that's where we get out very, very quickly from the individual internalized mom guilt of like, "Oh, what's wrong with me? This really doesn't feel good,"
Yeah.
to realizing that you're part of a larger system that should be doing a much better job of supporting you. But that also legitimizes you and helps you feel validated when you do find the strength to negotiate, or you're able to use whatever privilege that you have that perhaps others around you don't have, to speak up and to be a little bit more bare about your needs, to know that not only are you solving something for you in your personal life and your child and maybe your partner if you have one, but also for your colleagues and also for our greater culture as a whole, to make these like long overdue corrections. And can that actually be something that one person helps achieve? Like, yeah, just by asking for what you need, you really can make a profound difference.
Oh my god. I could literally go for hours, Lauren. I'm obsessed. Okay, so something you said there, we talk a lot about this concept of empowered versus in your power.
Mm.
So empower, like I want to go out and empower women. It's assuming that I have something to give, right?
Right.
And that the truth is like we are each in our power when we are safe, when we are secure, when we are
Mhm.
supported, when we have good sleep habits and eating habit, like, health that is beyond the face mask, like that kind
Mhm.
of thing. So, Lauren, something we were talking about that really to me is this idea of empowerment. And it's almost like something we're searching for, right? Like I'm reading women's empowerment content and I'm going to conferences or whatever it is. And it's this idea that something is outside of ourselves and I will accomplish
Mhm.
it. I'm seeking it, fake it till you make it, swagger, whatever. And I often have found and this is really over the past, call it year of my own journey, like you said, when I raised my hand and said, like, hey guys, I'm actually really struggling. Every other mother I know was like, yeah, me too. Even
Yeah.
friends that aren't moms that are, just really multifaceted, dynamic women are like, oh, I've thought about driving my car off the road. People that I'm very close with. And I'm like, wait, this is something we're all collectively experiencing. That can't be normal. And so it's this idea of what has to be true for you to be in your power? Because
Mhm.
one, when I'm in my power, I am going to be crushing it at work, right? Like I don't know anybody that's in their power that is not performing their best. And so I look at it to say it is not that you are wrong in whatever system, it just may not work for you. There are macro level changes to be made, sure. Like yes, 1000%, and I hope that's the world where, we're heading towards, especially with so many women like yourself, like the stories we're hearing on, with it all saying, hey, there just has to be another way. And I
Mhm.
played the game and I did all the things and it still didn't work. And if I feel that way, then like maybe let's try it this way. I think that's a great piece. But for me, it's asking the questions of saying, what will make me feel in my power? And when something's wrong, so often as women, I have found at least, I don't speak up until I have maybe alternative solutions. Like I not only
Mhm.
know something's wrong, but then I want to be like, and here's how we fix it. But the truth is these are not things that can be fixed in a silo or alone. And so I have found just again very recently to be able to say like this isn't sitting well and inviting in, calling in,
Mhm.
not making people feel shitty for how it is, but saying like, I need help, or is there a way that we can think through this? And so as you're talking about the fifth trimester, I think that giving not only employees and women and caregivers language, but you're also giving companies and you're giving them research to say, hey, this is a systemic thing that a majority of our workforce at some point will go through,
Mhm.
whether it's parenthood or caregiving. How will we show up? And what are sustainable practices to put in
Mhm.
place? And so I don't know if you have any thoughts around the in your power versus empower.
Mhm.
And then some closing thoughts, like our calls to action for people listening, especially for women, for mothers listening, of how do we go forth and really acknowledge and stand in our power while we're doing this new thing called being a working mom.
Mhm. Oh gosh, I love all of that. It's funny. My business was so my book first came out in 2017. And for the first 3 years, I was building a business that was meant for brand new moms, for women going back to their paid work after maternity leave.
Mhm.
And then the pandemic hit. And
Yep.
I mean, like, that is gonna be, like, you know how there's, like, a bridge in every song? Like,
Yeah.
that's gonna be the bridge in my song forever now. And then
Um,
the pandemic hit, and I had, initially building my business, it had been really well received for me to go into companies and talk to their new moms, but I was always seen as a little bit niche, and like they would have to like really like, dig in the couch cushions to like, figure out which employee resource group would have resources just to support brand new moms. And I kept saying like, but this stuff really applies more broadly. And then March 2020, America hits, and suddenly it really applies super broadly. It becomes clear that, suddenly, you've got all kinds of like in heterosexual couples, there was a huge imbalance in terms of who was doing more
yep.
caregiving and who was doing more of the monitoring of the homeschool and the taking care of the younger children, in spite of, perhaps both parents in those couples having incomes. And there were so many inequities, and businesses realized that not only was it, moms who needed support, but they were going to be contributing to the problem if they didn't also support dads to have that visibility of their kids in the background. And this is obviously for workers who are able to even work from home, which
Right.
is obviously not everyone, not even the majority. And then you've got grandparents who are stepping in,
Yep.
and you've got parents of older children who might have certain special needs or have
Mhm.
learning disabilities who are trying to learn things that really you need expert teachers to teach, like from their dining room tables. And it just became clear very quickly how universal a lot of what I had been studying and researching and teaching about the new working mother experience that applied much, much more broadly. And so, kind of bizarrely, in this moment of like, I had had a 2020 that was like all these like speaking engagements were lined up, and it felt like I was really hitting my stride
Mhm.
as a business owner, and that all fell away in like a couple weeks. My husband is a doctor, works in a hospital, so he was an essential worker. He was gone 15 hours a day. We had like no gender equity in our home at that time, and yet I'm
Yep.
supposed to be like a gender equity like expert. It was
Uh-huh.
all going to shit. It was definitely a huge fuck it moment. And I was talking to my best friend on the phone. Thank God for Liz, who's a teacher. And Liz was like, this feels like a whole lot like maternity leave. Like, we're having to like ask for a lot of
Right?
stuff. It's like I'm really kind of raw right now, and I'm having to like be like really comfortable sharing a lot of personal stuff with and I was like, oh, eureka, we're all in our fifth trimesters. So from
Oh
that
my
moment
god, yes.
on, sorry, this is a really long
No, I'm obsessed. This is great.
so from that moment on, thank you, Liz, I was able to pitch my services as pretty much for all employees, for
Mhm.
everyone who is a caregiver of a small child, a large child, a partner, themselves,
Yeah.
elders in their lives. And, I mean, like, there's no one you're going to talk to who doesn't take care of someone or something. And by the way, taking care of ourselves, I mean, coming back to your mental health crisis moment, is essential too. That counts as caregiving. We know that for family and medical leave, the unpaid 12 weeks of federally protected
Yep.
leave that like only barely over half of people even have access to. But of people who take it, 51% of FMLA applications are for people to care for themselves. Like that counts. Anyway, the whole point is this is
Wow.
all now so much broader. And I think ultimately, like not just obviously like good for my business and for, my soul, but I think it's really, we're having a giant sea change of a moment where a lot of these needs, a lot of the broken systems, are so much more visible than they ever were.
Mhm.
And collectively, we have the buy in. It's not just the moms in that silo anymore, it's everybody who wants to support the ability to do multiple jobs at once, to be paid for contributing to our economy and also raise a generation that's coming after us. And I think that's kind of the whole point. And by the way, while we're doing it, we're also demonstrating for our children going through hard stuff
Mhm.
and getting through to the other side, and that it's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to like love and be inspired by parts of your work and to be really frustrated by other parts of it. And like you still do it for an ultimate good. Maybe that's
Mhm.
privilege to say because, not everybody gets to do work that feels that meaningful.
Sure.
But I think the work of raising children is meaningful. And so even if you're doing something you don't love all day long, if you can help your children understand why you do it and getting through the hard stuff and the teamwork of it, I think that that has meaning too.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the in the power, like how in this experience, whether it's, no matter circumstances, like where are the parts that you can find your power, your footing? And I think story,
Mhm.
like how do we see ourselves
Mhm.
as the main character in these stories? Stories inform beliefs, beliefs inform actions, actions inform systems. And so I think that this moment in time where the world essentially stopped, we were all at home and we all were connected in a different way through a different purpose. You heard these universal stories, these universal truths that for many people that hadn't experienced that as a reality now had a belief change and a belief shift.
The
And I
real
actually have seen,
values gut check,
yeah,
right?
values.
Mhm.
We're living our values in a different way. And so I think we all look at the past few years with a critical eye, a lot of grief, a
Mhm.
lot of, working through hard things, but I do have an element of gratitude for this moment in time, that this collective reckoning. It's like how are we all went through something really hard, and now the true character is how you come out the other side. And so I love the idea that moms could be a key part of this, because
Thank you.
anybody that's gone through that fifth trimester, we know what it looks like to emerge back in a world that kept going while you were
Totally.
healing. So
That's
I think that,
exactly it.
yeah, the shifting of valued. We say that our mission is to for women to be equal and valued architects of the systems that run our lives at work, at home, and in our or in our communities. And the
I love
idea
that.
of valued, not just there for diversity sake. Like I don't need that. That's bastardization of a term, but there because it really is like there's something that can be better for it. So that is where we're going to come to today's conversation. This was like I said, I could have kept going. I mean, gosh, you're
Mm,
just I
thank
love
you.
the research. I love your ability to put words, and I love your ability to make it really human and really um, you know, feminine as well, like in celebrating what womanhood is, what motherhood is.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So calls to action. I would love to put in a plug for a nonprofit that I just helped found with a bunch of co-founders in the fall called Chamber of Mothers. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we are a collective lobby to focus America's attention on the rights of moms. And we essentially support a bunch of other advocacy groups that are deeply, deeply rooted in so many of these systemic problems. People who are making corrections for maternal mental health care and paid family and medical leave that we so desperately need in this country. And corrections, God, we didn't even talk about the childcare
Right.
crisis. Usually, all day long, I talk about the childcare crisis, but and really, really bolstering just the rights of moms as a basic human right for all. To feel like there is this floor of support. And anyway, so Chamber of Mothers, come join us. We have
This
an
will not be
event.
the last time through it all that you hear about Chamber of Mothers, because as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, I think it's the tipping point or the top of the iceberg of a conversation that I hope to go much deeper on.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. And then on Instagram, I'm the fifth trimester, although this week I've not been feeling well, so I haven't posted that much, but that's fine. And then I do the work I do that supports like being able to have conversations like this is my corporate work. So I go into businesses and I help them retain women by supporting caregiving employees. I give talks, I do coaching, I do best practices management training, and I love it. And I learn from every audience. So thank you for having me.
Lauren Smith Brody, the founder of the Fifth Trimester Movement. This has been a beautiful conversation, and I hope not the last with It All Media.
Thank you, Casey. Really good getting to know you.
You too. All right. We will see you next time. Itallmedia.co, the home for the news stories that define us and conversations women want to have. My name is Casey Lett Gordon, and it's always a pleasure.